Oh, yes.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angie Raymond, and welcome virtually to the Ostrom Workshop. We welcome you today in collaboration with the SINE Foundation, and we're launching what we're calling the Truth-Telling Think Tank. So I'm going to turn it over to Ariel to give you an overview of who he is and who the foundation is, and then we'll go around the room a bit. Ariel?
Yeah. Thank you, Angie. Welcome everyone. Quite excited to see a lot of new faces actually. Even though I have also to say this, we really hope that this is just the beginning of a long-term project with also a growing team of people working on this, as we believe, very important matter. And we're also going to save you a lot of time actually. I would love to skip all the intros and really dive into this as quick as we can. As Angie already said, we would really like to split the meeting in half and have the first half more on information delivery, and then really have enough time to discuss what you believe is important in this project. Very quickly, the SINE Foundation, we are a non-profit organization based in Berlin, and we build open source technology and governance frameworks for lasting data collaboration. And in our biggest project, we work together with standard-setting bodies like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, industry initiatives like the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and a lot of companies in the so-called Partnership for Carbon Transparency, where we help to increase transparency in supply chains, how the impact is of different companies regarding to their emissions, to enable them to decarbonize their value chains. And a lot of things that you're going to see in this presentation is motivated by this background. But I hope you will also realize that everything that we're going to talk about is also highly relevant in almost every sustainability initiative that we work with and that we see more or less every day. Angie already said a few words. I'm not sure, Angie, do you want to add a few things on the Ostrom Workshop? Or?
Sure. Just a couple of words. Of course, the Ostrom Workshop is located at Indiana University, which you can see a little bit behind me, and Simon, who's also sitting here. I'm the Director of Data Management and Information Governance, which is how I become interested in this area, of course. And more broadly, the workshop itself looks at governance structures in a lot of different areas, including natural resources, which it very much is in play in this conversation as well. It just occurred to me we should probably let Chris do a 2-second introduction as well, because there is actually an organizing group of us that put this effort together. So Chris, I just threw you under the bus, but you want to do a quick introduction as well?
No problem. Chris Draper, visiting scholar here at the Ostrom Workshop, and Angie and I have worked for, I guess, years now on blockchain and data governance. My interest is in, as CTO of Third Coast Commodities, we are responsible for proving products quality and origin in something that's chemically the same but has a government identification of when it gets subsidies or not. So a lot of the major issues we have here with validity of products, of data, of how we actually know something is what it is my main interest and focus, and providing some real world of how do you get the guys in the plant to do this now. So that's my balance here.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. And actually, we're going to also hear a very interesting example where he's facing this truth-telling challenge in a very complex network, actually. Again, what are the goals of this meeting? I think for us, it was really important to just get things going and gather a first group of interested people. And again, we really hope that it's just the beginning and that this group is growing over time. So I also strongly encourage you to invite everyone where you believe this person might be interested and forward them to us. As I believe we have a lot of different directions where this could go and a lot of projects where this is relevant in. What's most important, obviously, is then first create a common understanding of this challenge, and then the best way of Eleanor Ostrom, we want to discuss and define together with you how this process should look like going forward. And again, this will be part of the second half of the meeting where we then hopefully have a very vivid discussion with you. I already mentioned the Partnership for Carbon Transparency, and to give you some background motivation where we come from. In the Partnership for Carbon Transparency, we focus on the challenge of so-called Scope 3 emissions. And as you might not be aware of Scope 3 emissions. Those are emissions that occur along the value chain, right? So if you purchase input goods to create an output good, those input goods already have certain emissions attached to it because those input goods were also produced somewhere, right? And right now, firms do not really have to report on them, which makes it really weird because usually Scope 3 emissions are 80 to 90% of your total emission footprint. This could also, for example, if you're a company and you're hosting your own service, by moving your service to the cloud, you would remove your carbon footprint as cloud emissions are Scope 3 emissions, which are not included in your company reporting yet, right? And there are a lot of things that you can do right now as we do not have full transparency along the supply chain. The good news is that finally, especially in Europe, there's a lot of regulatory pressure on companies now to also report on Scope 3 emissions. And that you as a firm are able to do this, you need to get access to a lot of data that is not under your control, right? It sits with your supplier, and your supplier also needs a lot of information from their suppliers and so on and so forth. It gets actually even more complex in this very simple line of firms, as usually in the real life, you do not have a very linear supply chain, but a very complex network of suppliers. What you can see here is a real life example of a supply chain for a detergent. So it's a simple soap at the end of the day, right? And each gray box is a supplier providing an input good to create the output good, which is a soap. So we're not talking airplanes or cars. It's a very simple product. And you already have a lot of gray boxes. And each of those gray boxes sits in a different country. Each gray box has a different agenda. There's no alignment of incentives. There's high risk of adverse selection and so on and so forth. And we believe that this picture also shows you that traditional auditing and verification mechanisms cannot work for carbon accounting. Firms already spend billions and billions of dollars on financial accounting, which is quite simple compared to carbon accounting. And we really hope that this becomes clear looking at this picture for a very simple product. And obviously, we do not want to stop at carbon, right? We want to include biodiversity. We want to include water usage. We want to include a lot of factors that we finally can measure the impact of a company to the world, right? And we then can also finally activate effective policies from governments to decarbonize the economies, to get or to move to a more sustainable economy in general. Usually when we talk to people about this, they always came up with, okay, I heard about this technology called blockchain, and blockchain was created to replace trust. So we're basically done, right? Let's just use it and we have solved the problem. Well, no, unfortunately, it's not that easy. We at SINE Foundation, we're strong believers in technologies, right? And each technology, including blockchain, they always have this huge challenge of the so-called closed world assumption, right? So each technology can only work with the data that sits in the technology. But you always have something happening in the real world which then needs to get transported or entered into the technology, right? And if you have flawed input data, you will always get nonsense output, or very simply put, garbage in, garbage out, which apparently is abbreviated with GIGO. I'm not sure what I should think about it, but it's the GIGO challenge, apparently. And the starting question of us was, how can we tackle this GIGO challenge in very complex networks and also actually at very low costs, right? Because again, if we want to solve the transparency of sustainability impact of companies, we need to solve this for a lot of different products, for a lot of different dimensions. And we cannot do this by incurring tremendous costs for each of them. I'm actually also quite happy again that Angie and the Ostrom Workshop joined us, who obviously spend a lot of time on data governance. And again, Angie, I'm not sure if you want to add something here or if we should...
So I don't want to get in the way, and I certainly don't want to take up too much time because we do want to talk to you and hear your thoughts. But I do think it's important that we recognize that data governance is a complex ecosystem, and even this diagram is quasi simplistic in the context of what we're talking about. And so you almost need to think of this in Ostrom terminology as nested zones of data governance that will be in various places along these different ecosystem challenges. And so this is just an easy diagram for us to visualize the complexity that's going to grow very quickly when we talk about governance within this particular chain environment.
Thank you. So as already said, kind of like what we aim to do here is to really kick off the so-called truth-telling think tank, or T5, which is an open source, or should be an open source library of, again, software technology, but also governance tools who help the technology to flourish. And at the end of the day, our ultimate goal is really to find mechanisms to increase the data quality in such sustainability initiatives. And myself, I'm just finishing up my PhD, and I stumbled upon a lot of very interesting papers, actually, where I always thought, okay, this sounds interesting, right? So why did no one try this out before? And I believe there's a lot of research buried in libraries right now where there's always this last step missing, right? So how can we now take this and put it into reality? How can we use those mechanisms and apply them in very different fields? And the good news is, I think truth-telling is a subject that has been studied for decades now, right? In game theory, in mechanism design, in psychology, governance, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but again, it's just not being put into practice right now. And what we would love to do is to really look into this research, consolidate this existing research, but then test and apply it to the field, come up with new ideas, see how this works, and to grow, to build a growing library that is really available to everyone. So we're going to build a website, we'll put everything on there. We want to publish case studies to also inspire other initiatives to learn from us, but then also to contribute to this open source library. And again, very important for us, we as SINE Foundation, we also would have resources to build technology, but again, we don't believe that technology is enough. We also want to develop those governance frameworks in combination with the software. Before we get to more details, maybe a quick question to the group. Is this all clear? Do you have any questions, comments already up to this point?
I'm kind of interested in the garbage in, garbage out problem, and like the people who have studied it a bit more. How are other complex networks and complex systems dealing with the problem? I mean, I'm a software engineer, so I should have some idea, I guess. But yeah, I'm just interested to understand, because obviously, you know, a complex system is a complex system. So how are other people dealing with it?
Well, but maybe Chris, you can also comment on this, because I think you also work on this on a daily basis. But usually what we see is that people try to solve it with technology again, and they kind of like close the gap and close the gap and close the gap, but they do not realize that you can never fully close the gap with technology, right? So to be honest, we at the SINE Foundation, we're talking to a lot of sustainability initiatives that all say that they solved the problem, but actually they did not, because it's always this last step missing. So I cannot, I mean, there are obviously a couple of details, but I think for now, for me, I didn't see a solution where I would say, okay, it is really fully done. But Chris, maybe you can also comment on that.
I mean, I think that, and this is where, again, the diversity of opinions we have right now is highly valuable, and it's exciting to see that some of the resumes of folk on here as well, because how we look at the problem, ironically, we deal in garbage. So for 25 years, the product that we actually collect, process, and convert into renewable diesel, renewable aviation fuel, biodiesel traditionally, that's always been seen as a waste stream. So we deal in low CI, low carbon intensity materials, to actually turn them into their highest use calorie, their highest use core of energy. And really from that perspective, you're dealing with your data source as a 16-year-old kid walking out of a restaurant, dumping it into a bin that hopefully is yours, or maybe it's someone else's, and then a driver who goes around at midnight to 30 places and collects all this stuff 150 to 300 gallons at a time, right? You will never have ultimate certainty. So one of the major shifts that we've taken is that our goal is a certain level of uncertainty more than it is an answer. We focus on what is an answerable question more than what is the answer to the question that we've been given. So I think that a lot of this is going to be a function of, the way we've approached a lot of this is a function of framing, number one, of adding as many data points as we can add, given the restrictions of privacy. We'll talk through slightly later in the example of where we have some of our other economic and commercial competitiveness pressures. But again, for us to answer your question on garbage in, garbage out, we accept that there is garbage. We accept that that garbage is going to be at a level that is currently unknown, and we just need to know what it is, not make sure it's less.
Thank you, Chris. I just got a private chat message saying kind of like certification verification obviously is always a way to look into this. But again, I really hope that you always now keep this picture of the soap supply chain in mind, right? So if like every gray box now calls Ernst & Young and asks them to come into their company to verify this one ingredient for the soap, it's going to be a lot of revenue for a few firms that will be very happy about it, but I think it's not a scalable thing that we can do to really verify every single thing. And Chris, I believe what you just said is quite important. Like, what is the level of uncertainty that we can also accept, right, in such ecosystems, that the ecosystem itself can work, but again, we also don't overload it with certification and auditing mechanisms, and no one's actually capable of doing the actual job anymore because they are just busy in filling out auditing questionnaires. Are there any other questions, comments up to this point? All right, then, what we actually, we had a couple of preparation meetings before, right? And we decided to actually keep this whole thing a bit vague on purpose, right? To kind of like also give you more room for creativity, as we believe, truth is a big word, right? We could talk about truth for already years and have a lot of very intellectual discussions. And we just want to give you like now two very specific examples that kind of like set a framework how you could think about this challenge, right? And the first situation is coming from the Partnership for Carbon Transparency. And very simply, you have end suppliers, right? They all aim to sell a product to a buyer. And let's just assume it's the same product, it has the same quality, very simple. But each product has a different product carbon footprint. And let's say all the suppliers and this one buyer, they are all in the same, let's call it information environment for now. And in this information environment, we can apply different rules, different mechanisms. And this is kind of like our playing field where we can try out things. And at the end of the day, the question again is, what rules, mechanisms do we need in this gray box that we can ensure that each of those suppliers reveals their true product carbon footprint, right? So in this sense, truth really boils down to just a very simple number that each supplier knows and the buyer does not know, right? How can we make sure that the buyer makes a purchase decision based on the actual product carbon footprints? A second example, and there I hand over to Chris, is a challenge that he actually is faced with quite a lot.
Yeah, so when you're looking at our company as a whole, so Third Coast Commodities, we deal in pretty much every waste stream that can be reused. We buy it, sell it, trade it. The CEO and I have been in this for almost 20 years. Third Coast has been around for just past 10 a week ago. So actually for the soap piece, we actually inputs to that soap equation, part of those are ours. So crushes from all kinds of different things are those items. The piece that is of interest here on this slide is one of our divisions does waste oil collection, used cooking oil collection. When you're looking within Europe, one of the certifying bodies is ISCC, identifies that if I actually have this product of a certain restriction, so either it's vegetable-based or animal-based coming from certain locations, my access to different subsidies is different. So there is an incentive on our part. We want to make sure we know the truth as much as possible, and there's an incentive on the supplier's part or the other place to make sure that we can't identify when there's a problem, because the difference in value of our product, for every dollar of value our product has, if we cannot prove its origin, it reduces by 85%. So a very interesting economic incentives, and that's just on the front end of that product purchase, right? The second issue within our environment that makes it very interesting is we're in a competitive environment. Every single restaurant you go to has a bin out the back or has a tank in there that has a port on it. And no one knows who the people are. No one knows who really, our drivers believe they're in customer service, but no one's ever met them because at 3 a.m. they're going and picking up this bin and no one knows who it is and no one knows if it's someone else either, right? So I don't know if everyone watches The Simpsons, when Homer was going to go get rich off stealing restaurant grease. We literally do have a call every day to figure out how much of our stuff was stolen each day. And that is, again, part of our calculation. Theft is in there, competitive mobility is in there, churn is in there. Churn being any one of these individuals can tell us right now, there's multi-year contracts you have with your supplier, but your average customer will turn over in less than 3 years. It's 2.8 years is how long you're actually going to have one source. So it's a highly mobile location. It is an environment where chemically all the product is exactly the same, but your subsidy is down to whether or not I can prove with certainty enough that that material came from where it was, it is what it is, and I had the right to own it. So in there, what we have done is we've added all kinds of, to the comment earlier, all kinds of different technology pieces that will not, and that we hope will not prevent our drivers from doing their job. Our drivers take pictures as they arrive, pictures when they open a bin, when they close it, and then when they leave. We have GPS data on our trucks. We then have a true up when those trucks hit our plant that identifies our projections to what arrives. But all of those still leave us an environment that's highly fluid, that is highly mobile, that is from locations that not only are not really incentivized to help us, they just don't even know or care. So again, this is where our focus is typically on what is the level of certainty I can have in an uncertain world, knowing that my true value, my true impact, my true value, my true goodness is going to to actually flow a certain way, but I'll never be able to fully lock down this pound is exactly this pound all the way through the system.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions to that?
No, but I just wanted to say that sounds like a super interesting problem. Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. It has been actually incredibly fun to be in. This is we're finally arriving at this solutions to a degree, but again, we're only part of this problem. It's been 17 years in the making, so we're hugely open to getting pushed on different directions still. So.
But Chris, maybe just one question, because Louis, you asked this question earlier in a more general way. So as far as I understood, like how you tackle this problem right now, I mean, you work a lot of technologies, right? You add GPS to the trucks. You try to get as much verifiable information as you can. Do you already thought about? I mean, are you setting any incentives or any let's say more governance things to this problem, or is it more on the technology side how you try to tackle it at the moment?
So how we're approaching it, I mean, from an actual just sort of core nuts and bolts of what we're doing, the technologies we're using are mixtures of EDLs, which is they track where your trucks go. And we are using, Microsoft as a core platform that it was a choice made before me, but actually now that we've been using it, I haven't been as irritated all the time. So as many of you technologists know, Microsoft is a lot like getting a bucket of Legos where most are broken, they're all miscolored, and the directions are wrong. So it is still an interesting activity to assemble it all, but we have a driver app right now. What's active in the field is we have a driver app that connects into an intermediary database that once that data is verified, it goes into our core database of truth, sort of our pure internal system. At that input, which is essentially cell phones for drivers, we basically step them through the process of proving where they are, which correlates to their truck data. And again, even in truck data and EDLs, there's still a significant level of uncertainty, especially when you're dealing in cities and you can be, within a few hundred yards of another location. There's tendency for that system to not always be accurate, right? So we're going to end up with misalignments of where the driver says they are, where the pictures that he's taken from that location prove he is, and where the truck says he is. So again, we have a whole range of misalignments that are there. Where we're moving with our driver, everything we do is to attempt to reduce, when we're talking about risk, is attempt to reduce the number of human inputs. We're actually right now moving to a, and I used to have, when we have them on the field, is we built hard hats that put on a camera on it. And basically when they arrive at a location, the video starts. We've built an ML model that identifies whether I'm looking at a bin, whether I'm looking in a bin, whether I'm looking at whether I'm looking at a port, and it will then automatically pull all those our 4 compliance images we want, and then actually estimate the amount that we believe is there. And right now, the model, even with we're at, I think 340,000 images is what we're actually processing through right now of the ones that are just sliced. We're using those to get us down to, so far, sub 12% uncertainty in product levels within those bins. So our goal is, how do we get to anchorable events that are human verifiable, yet in reducing levels of dependence on human input is our first strategy for this. Our next strategy is, again, embracing the misalignment. When we're dealing with our inventory system, these products move around, and again, we're in a literally fluid environment, right? This isn't like I put 1,000 Nikes on the shelf and I pull out box 321. When I put another 400 Nikes on the shelf, I've now just made one bigger 400 Nike bigger problem, right? So I have a constant, I have a constant co-location, a constant product changing problem. We have a probabilistic ingredient list that we build that says, because our regulations state we need to be accountable for every pound down to source. Again, how do you do that? And in the traditional inventory models, they're not even built to be able to even do that. So we've actually gone with it. We've had to, again, rewrite and reapproach how our inventory system even approaches what a product is the other challenge in these environments where you're changing state of that product every single time you change locations. So technology wise, again, at our very core goal is to use the Microsoft platform, not promoting that in its general sense, but for its features, which is higher interoperability, easy API connection in, the ability of the fact that it isn't the back end really a blank Excel sheet that we can work with, does make it highly useful. But the fundamental is, for us, how do we embrace the misalignment? How do we reduce the number of human driver inputs? And how do we anchor them against specific events, not off projections? That's how we've been using our technology in this. And with the final piece, which we can, part of our solution is a blockchain-based validation tool that allows us to prove positives, knowing that we will never disprove negatives. Those are our main technology and strategy approaches that we've taken so far to this problem.
Thank you, Chris. All right, this was I think very, very interesting already. Kind of like a one very specific angle how you can tackle this. And our hope would be that we really find a lot of new ideas that will then be supported by different individuals with a diverse clustering of focus, backgrounds, and commitment. And as always, and I'm not going to hide, I was hoping that a few more people would show up today, as we had actually a lot more registrations. But I think that the biggest challenge of a group like ours always is to get the first group of hands-on people who actually do some work, right? To produce first results, to kind of like show what this group is capable of doing. And that's why for us, the focus of the next couple of weeks is really going to be to find hands-on people, either from theory, who would be interested in looking into existing research, looking into existing mechanisms, and merge this with hands-on people from the real world, so to say, to see how those mechanisms could work in practice. But I think we are also looking for people that might not have so much time to work on this on a regular basis, but they can also still provide a lot of value to the group by challenging the ideas, giving their feedback and insights based on their experience, again, from theory and practice. So what our goal would be of today's meeting is to get a first sense of feeling whether you could see yourself already somewhere in this metrics, or if you know people who would like to be involved. So I don't know, if you have master or PhD students working on a thesis, let us know, right? Forward them to me or Angie, and we would be happy to talk to them. Do you have people from the field? We would be more than happy to talk to them, right? I actually saw Marvin from the World Business Council actually also in this call. So if you have people from the practice who actually face this challenge on every day, forward them to us, right? And we can really get a hands-on group going and working on this. And then the idea would be to have such meetings like today on a regular basis where we present the ideas, discuss them with them, you challenge them, give you input ideas to it, to then start building this library as we said at the beginning. This being said, again, to the group, what do you think? What are the first thoughts coming to mind looking at this?
If no one else is going to say anything, look, I'm interested in participating, but my background is non-academic, and I don't have any sort of formal qualifications. And I am just a practicing software engineer, and I've been doing that for like 7 years now. So I have hands-on experience with implementing stuff and writing code and engineering complex systems. But in terms of some of the theoretical stuff, I probably wouldn't be as useful. But I'm more than happy to throw my hat in the ring and have some conversations with people that might know a little bit more, and I can sort of help with maybe implementation details and stuff like that.
Can I give a quick answer? We need more people like you. Academics are terrifying. They get set in their ways. They have research agendas that oftentimes don't fit actual real world needs, quite frankly. And so we need more people like you. So as long as you'll tolerate us at times asking you what probably seems like incredibly simple questions, so we get it right. My personal worst fear is that we get it way wrong and we accidentally implement something in a regulatory or governance structure that gets in the way of the good stuff that's happening. So we need more people like you. We promise not to be super over the top academic at times, right? And the meetings that are going to be academic-ish, we'll label them that way, and you can come in and sort of listen or not, right? That's important. That's our job, is to manage the meeting agendas and stuff so they're clear, so you're not wasting your time attending a meeting that has no interest to you, but that you're a contributor in the ways that you can be the most help to us, and we very much appreciate that.
Can I provide a quick support for Arrow's slide here as well? Because I think the other element of this that is highly, highly important is and I think this is where Angie and I have worked together for a number of years well, is that we sometimes forget that the actual issue is we're just missing a button. So now my whole day is figuring out what buttons we've missed, and it turns out how does that missed button propagate through the system? So Lewis, when you're talking about what is the actual practical reality of it, again, that is often far more vital than the theory, right? This is, I think, to Errol's point earlier on blockchain, right? The limitations of blockchain in truly decentralized manner, you can't prove a negative. You just fundamentally cannot do it. And in a lot of ways, that's just a reality of, we just didn't realize a button's missing. So what I do love about this slide is that this is dependent on multidisciplined, with discipline being those who can realize this is where the buttons sit, and those who realize this is the why of the button's existence. And those double checks, continually of like, as you go down a rabbit hole, making sure you're still in the right place. So I think the goal that excited me about this, and we're looking at the diversity of skill sets on here, is building a multidiscipline team around an idea that if we may or may not know if the idea will work, but at least if we're able to see all the sides of the problem, and we're able to actually bring those to bear and realize that each element needs the other pieces, which is what I love the arrows here, is that that is far more important than anyone having a single piece, because I think that's where, when we have gone wrong in our activities, it's because we charged down what we knew was the right answer until we realized that we just given a driver on a route who has 30 places to go in 10 hours, 43 buttons to press, and every one of his pieces of data he put in was wrong. The first thing we did was pull out 39 of those buttons. So those are the practical answers to these, are often more stupid than they are smart. And that's where we just need everyone to realize we need more stupid contributions in many cases than we do anything that's brilliant, because that's where the brilliance hides. So,
Well, luckily for you, I excel at stupid, so.
oh man, well, I know, so we're probably gonna have to have a bit of a race there to see who gets there first.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for your answers, both of you. Yeah, and thank you for admitting that academics can be scary. I do find them sometimes. So, yeah.
Yes, Ray. I hope I pronounced your name right. If not, please apologize.
No problem. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. Thank you. I had a let's a little elaborative comment. So I work on waste, particularly I look at regulations, more on the consumer side. And so I would just very briefly mention an instance from my field, so which is so often an imaginary world where you, I mean, the case had a little bit of the base of the idea is that you have homogeneous feedstock, right? And so we have this vehicle which comes and collect waste, household waste in India, and one of that waste categories, your leftovers, kitchen waste leftover, or food which is not got rotten or a day old, and you can still give it to animals, right? Now, in an imaginary world, where particularly in Indian cities, animals starve or they do not get the right kind of food, but there is a lot of food which is actually going to the bin, which gets mixed with other kind of waste. And so the entire food or the waste is contaminated, ends up in the landfill or goes into an incineration plant, or let's say various kind of stuff, right? So in that particular, let's say, part of the neighborhood in a city, they had achieved a different kind of segregation. And one was this, people would come and deposit their leftover food in that particular compartment. And that food again goes back to circulation for, different kind of animals who eat the very leftover food in the very next day. Now, there is a little bit of value to it, economic value. There are aggregators who are willing to buy it also. But anyway, the idea is that I think there is a possibility that and so there is no data. Please understand, these are all sort of operations that are going on in a very, I don't know, there is absolutely no data. Everyone is working informally. They know the points, where to collect, where to buy, where it has to be supplied to. But I think what was really interesting here is the idea of a homogeneous feedstock. And this is the biggest problem in India. But anyway, I think what I wanted to point out that in an urban imagination, that you really want to bring together a community where actually there is a sort of connection between, okay, you can supply a bit of feedstock for someone who will get advantage out of it. Maybe some plastics which would go out for recycling, some tin can which could go out for different kind of recyclings. But when the feedstock is entirely heterogeneous or mixed, there is a lot of disincentive for further processing, or let's say reducing our carbon footprints or whatever. So I just wanted to flag this one out, that there is a possibility if each and homogeneous feedstocks can be tagged, or there is a way we can achieve this, then I think it will be a beautiful thing. So I just wanted to make that comment here. Thanks.
When you're
Thank you. I
when
think
you're
this was a
talking
very, yeah. No, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
when you're talking about homogeneous, so Raj, when you're talking about a homogeneous feedstock, are you talking about homogeneous within the parameters of its use, or homogeneous within how do you define homogeneity in there?
Okay, so let's say agricultural residue, which is pure, and there has been no contamination. They are just left on the field, and they're purely homogeneous in nature. You can directly take them to a processing plant, extract some form of energy or some form of reuse value out of it. Agricultural residue, right? In an urban case, I imagine, let's say, single-use plastics, they are not further reused, rather directly deposited in a bin, which can be directly taken to a recycling plant. Okay, so in that sense, I use the term homogeneous, which has no further or any further level of mix or contamination with any other material.
Yeah, that's, I mean, again, that's hugely interesting. I mean, that's exactly in some ways a lot of our problem is the definition of homogeneity, and how do you know, where do you put it, right? I mean, that's in some cases the core of some of the problem here. I mean, the American food recovery space is very similarly volunteer driven, data light, with a patchwork of regulations as well. So I mean, very, similar to the animal case, but at a higher expectation of standard. Yeah, no, I agree that homogeneity versus heterogeneous issue is massive.
Very interesting. Raj, do we have your email address? Actually, I'm not sure if I saw you on the calendar invite. If not, would be highly appreciated if you could.
Yeah, I think it's there in the common email list.
Okay, perfect.
I'll send it again. Otherwise, yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Because this sounds certainly like something that because I mean, again, this is exactly what we're looking for, right? Like people like you seeing a challenge, seeing solutions, and then discuss together how we can take those and apply maybe also to other fields. So thank you very much for this very good comment. Are there any other comments, questions, remarks that you would like to do? All right. If not, Lewis is saying something again, then I guess we just real quick to sum it up, right? Again, for us today, it was really to get things going and kind of like to create a common sense, common understanding of the challenge. And again, we at the SINE Foundation, but also as Chris and Raj just explained, we see a lot of initiatives, especially also in sustainability, struggle with low data quality. Because we always have this complex supply chain issues with a lot of different players, with a lot of different agendas and incentives. We talked about a few examples like carbon accounting, the validation challenge of Chris, digital product path, ESG reporting, and so on and so forth. And this list is almost endless, and they always struggle with the issue. Someone is sitting in the offline world, needs to enter data into some technology. How can we overcome this bridge, and how can we set a governance structure that makes this person wanting to enter the real data into this solution? We want to really kind of like build an open library with existing ideas, new ideas, enhance them with real world feedback, and really hope that we get a group of people, again, part of them being hands-on on a couple of those projects and really working on this more or less on a daily, weekly basis, and pushing things forward, and then having a second part of the larger group, then always coming in, challenging the ideas, guiding, giving their guidance based on their experience and insights that they get from theory and practice again. And at the end of the day, we really hope to build this true think tank, which is a open source library of software and governance tools that a lot of different initiatives can use for free to increase their data quality in their ecosystems. And with that, Angie, over to you for some closing words, I guess.
Thank you. Just a quick closing of reach out. You have various emails at this point in time. We're looking forward to moving this forward in the next, hopefully really quickly, quite honestly. So you'll start getting a couple really simple push outs, asking you some questions, being sure, quite honestly, you want to keep getting information from us. There's nothing worse than turning into the creepy spam type generator. So, and we'll hopefully talk to you again really soon. Thank you for joining us for this. It was wonderful.